I was reading comments on the channel this week when an older comment that I read for the second time hit me in a slightly different way. This viewer said that in the US, their emergency surgery and their aftercare came to a total bill of $1.8 million. And that made me think, what would my illness have cost me? Or if you have another long-term chronic illness, what might it cost you? The short answer is my journey taking me from ulcerative colitis through to J-Pouch probably would have cost in the region of several $100,000. But the reality is it actually cost me nothing. That's because I have access to the incredible work done by our fantastic National Health Service, or NHS. The NHS has been described as the jewel in our crown, and I couldn't agree more. So let's rethink this, not as a price comparison, trying to make out that one's better than the other, but let's look at how the healthcare system where you live can directly impact your choices, what your journey looks like, and potentially even what your medical outcomes are. I've used ChatGPT to give me some cost estimates in the US for what my journey would have cost. The numbers ChatGPT returned came back in a range, so I've chosen the middle tier of that range. Now obviously there will be some regional differences, potentially some inflationary differences since that data was put together, but the costs should give a good idea of the point I'm trying to make. And that point is, what could I have been faced with? So knowing there may be some movement in these numbers, let's have a look at the kind of costs I might have faced. We'll start with the potential costs for my time living with ulcerative colitis. So I lived with UC for well over a decade. So I really had to think quite hard about all of the times I would have incurred some medical support from the NHS. I've put together the numbers which I think are a reasonable representation of my journey. And here's the kind of costs that ChatGPT has associated with that overhead. It's around $160,000. Now this number, when I saw it on screen, was shocking. And remember, that's only the first stage of my three-phase journey. Now the next phase is the surgical phase, and this is a lot easier put together because it's just 3 distinct surgeries. And as you can see, ChatGPT has put forward the estimated costs for each of these surgeries. However, that's not where the costs for this stage stops, because during this stage, I then had to live with a stoma for just over a year. So I've also included the cost for stoma supplies and all the sundries that come with that. So adding those 2 bits together, we get an estimate of what the total of the surgical phase might have cost me. Now this takes us to the final stage of my journey, and it's the stage I'm in now, living with my J-Pouch. And for me, this has been fairly light touch in terms of the medical support I've needed. I've had one scope of my pouch when I was first diagnosed with pouchitis, and over the 15 and now nearly 16 years that I've lived with my J-Pouch, I've had a few prescriptions for antibiotics and steroids to help with pouchitis. The biggest ongoing prescription I have is for loperamide, and that's something I take daily. I should point out that this is an ongoing stage, and these costs will continue to come in and trickle in over the years ahead. So now, let's take all of those costs, the totals from each of those phases, and get an overall grand total. I'm glad I was sitting down when I saw this number because it is shocking. Nearly $360,000. This is a ChatGPT estimated cost of what it would have taken to take me from UC through stomas, through J-Pouch to where I am now. So what have we learned from this? Firstly, I will be eternally grateful for the NHS and all of the fantastic work they do. I was able to focus 100% of my energy onto my health and onto my recovery without ever having to worry about the cost for the healthcare that I was receiving. Even if I had to pay for it and I had insurance, I didn't have to worry about filling forms in, making claims, getting receipts, worrying about claims being rejected. 100% of my focus, 100% of my energy on recovery. Now that said, the US has some of the most cutting-edge technologies, some of the most pioneering research, some amazing medical facilities. In fact, they've got some of the best places in the world. And the NHS has its own problems. It struggles with things like waiting lists. It's chronically underfunded in some areas. And it's always getting dragged in to the political realms, getting kicked around like a football. When I actually digested the so what of reading that comment for that person's medical bill, that $1.8 million, I was just left feeling incredibly thankful that I had access to the NHS. And I think that's something to recognise. Different countries do things differently, and that's fine. But the sad truth that I fear for some people is that along with having to face a difficult medical challenge, and this might not be anything to do with inflammatory bowel disease, along with having to face that, they're also having to face the burden of financial and economic hardship as a result of their health. I love my J-Pouch. I think I've had a really successful outcome with my J-Pouch. The fact I make videos on YouTube now and promote what a good quality of life you can have with a J-Pouch demonstrates that. In fact, I directly attribute the success of my J-Pouch to the NHS. Wherever you are in the world and whatever your healthcare system looks like, I hope and I wish that you can navigate your way through your healthcare system so that you too can reach a successful outcome. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel here at Pouch Heals. There's plenty more videos available on the channel now, so please go and have a look at one of those. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.